I know.
Great.
It's wonderful.
So I'll just share a funny story with you. I started an online Opon class yesterday. And
Yay!
so it's kind of hard, but I'm going to get it. So there are only 5 people in the class. And after the class, one of the women from the class sent me an email and said that she was friends with Laura Abramson Pritchard's mother, Ellyn, in St. Louis, and she had gotten information and had actually come to one of our online classes. So she said, I was in one of your classes and I enjoyed it and I recognized your smile. So I knew that was you. So it was just so funny. It's such a small world. I cannot believe, I mean, out of 5 people, 3 of whom are in Israel. No, 6 people, 3 are in Israel and 3 are in the United States. Denver, California, Denver, New York, and St. Louis. And the St. Louis person, of course, there's a connection. So really
advanced level, I imagine.
It's a level I tested in between the level 4 and 5, whatever that means. And so I'm stretching to the 5. They said I could, if it doesn't work, I can drop down. I can drop the class and go to a lower level, but I'm going to try and we'll see what happens. I mean, last time I was in a Hebrew class, I was 18 years old, which was a few years ago. So anyway.
Any questions, you can call me or write me.
Thank you, Gabi. Thank you very much. That's very helpful. I will do that. Thank you.
Happily. Also Spanish. And Janine
sí. Muchas gracias. And that's my other things. When I start to talk a foreign language, it's kind of a combined tape. So we can get Spanish and Hebrew together. Totalmente biachad. See, to me, it don't sound mishmash. It doesn't sound so different. It sounds like it works. All right, ladies, let's get started. I will go ahead and mute everybody. And if you have questions or when you have questions, please, you're welcome to unmute and ask. And we'll start with our blessing. Baruch atah Adonai Eloheinu melech haolam asher bachar banu mikol hamim v'natan lanu et Torato. Baruch atah Adonai noten haTorah. First of all, to start off with a big thank you to Dale for providing us with our illustration of the Mishkan, which is completed this week with the final Parshas on the Mishkan that we have been focusing on for the past number of weeks. We will come back to that. Also, before we start, I want to get too much started. I want to ask favors of you. I'm going to send out a survey that's from the Jewish experience. We're trying to reimagine our women's division and not create widgets and then tell people that they should want widgets, but to find out what women want in our community. And so I really appreciate it. It's a pretty short survey, but we really take it very seriously. And we're going to use people's responses to help us reimagine, refocus, and reorganize. So I'm going to send that out as a link to you. If you could fill that out, I'd really appreciate it. If you want to send it on to any other women, that's fine too. We're really trying to get a broad spectrum of the Jewish women in our community. And also, the Jewish Experience is going to have its cause match fundraiser that starts on Sunday. One of these heart-stopping, anxiety-provoking fundraisers where you have 24 hours or whatever to make a match. So I have a team, and my team is Team Hutt, H-U-T-T, Help Us Teach Torah. So I would love if you would like to make a contribution on my team. I'll also be sending out an email with that information. And I'm really competitive, which I discovered last year that even though, yes, all the money is going to the same cause, I really like it to be on my team. So I would love to invite you to be part of that. I think we've seen, the Jewish Experience has been really active during this past year in trying to provide everything to everybody, and programs and connections and classes and everything as much as we can with all the restrictions. And of course, all our costs stay the same. So you all are what makes it happen, and we really appreciate it. And so if you would like to help me with that, I would love that too. All right. And I just want to say Mazel Tov to Marjorie Berman. I saw the chat. I just saw that very quickly. Let's say Mazel Tov, a new granddaughter, and you just got to meet her. Mazel Tov, Marjorie. You should have lots of nachas and only simcha with your grandbaby, and she should grow to Torah, chuppah, and ma'asim tovim, to
Amen.
Torah, to Jewish wedding canopy, and to good deeds. And you should have lots of nachas from her.
Mazal tov. Amen.
So thank you very much. All right, ladies. We are in the last, as we said, the final parshas of the book of Exodus, the book of Shemot, are Vayakel and Pekudei. It is a double portion. We'll be reading both of them, and it will bring us to the conclusion. And we will say Chazak, Chazak, V'nit Chazek, strength, strength, and may we be strengthened. That we want to use all of the insight and wisdom that we have gained from the book of Exodus to launch us into what's coming next. What's coming next, of course, will be the book of Vayikra of Leviticus, but it's also to bring us to Pesach. So it usually coincides that we're finishing the book of Exodus when we're actually getting ready to celebrate the Exodus. It's kind of funny. This Shabbos is also, just to have more going on, is also called the Shabbat HaChodesh, the Shabbat of the month, meaning the month of Nisan, because the month of Nisan is going to start on Sunday. So the Shabbos before the start of the month of Nisan is always called Shabbat HaChodesh. But since Rosh Chodesh also starts on Sunday, it's also Shabbat Machar Chodesh. The Rosh Chodesh is going to be starting the next day. So we have a lot going on. And mostly, in a way, it seems like three different things. But what it's really focused on is getting ready for Pesach, and Pesach as the epitome and the boilerplate for how we understand the future redemption. So we're going into the month of redemption. So every new month, every new moon, every Rosh Chodesh is about the possibility as we see the very tiny sliver of the moon or darkness, and we know that it can only wax and start getting bigger, and that the best is yet to come perspective. So that's the case for all Rosh Chodeshes, but specifically for the month of Nisan, which is also the beginning of the Jewish calendar year for months. We're told that in Nisan, the Jewish people were redeemed, and in Nisan, the Jewish people will be redeemed. So we are looking at this, and if you remember way back to Tu B'Shvat, which seems like, I don't know how long ago that seems like it was, but it was in our period of time that we went from Tu B'Shvat, where there's just the very, very beginnings of new growth. And then we went to Purim 4 weeks after that, where we had God's hand in redemption that was hidden. And now we go to Pesach, the third, where God's hand will be clearly revealed. And we've been kind of building toward that, and that's what we are reaching now. Any questions just like on the logistics of all of that, just because it can get a little confusing? Okay, so we will read in the synagogue, we will be reading the Parsha Vayakel and Pekudei. We will also be reading the special Torah reading for Shabbat HaChodesh, which goes back to Parsha Bo, which tells us the commandments for Pesach. It tells us about establishing the calendar, that to have Nisan be the first of the month. So it's a little Rosh Chodesh hint. And it also tells us about all the laws of Pesach. That came between the 9th and the 10th plague. Let's pause and talk about how we're going to celebrate this holiday, and then we'll continue on with the 10th plague, and then we'll go on to the Exodus from Egypt. So we go back in time and we read that portion as well, because now we're getting ready for Pesach. And even at Walmart, the Passover food is there. As someone said, it's next to the dog food, which is a little kind of insulting. But as I said, well, maybe it has to do with the general taste of many of the Passover products, which have lots of different colorful boxes, but on the inside, they're basically matzah and of different forms with different whatever added to them. So that's there, and actually you can get some good deals. Also encourage people to support the Eastside Kosher Deli, which of course has had such a challenging time during the pandemic, and the prices are good. So people are getting ready for Pesach. So let's talk about how this all goes together. It's also the end of as we said, about the Mishkan. So let's focus on that first, especially since Dale has that beautiful illustration for us. So the completion of the Mishkan, we learned something very interesting, which is that Moshe single-handedly put up the Mishkan. Now, I've watched these design shows, and I watch when people put up trusses, and like it takes like a crew of like, I don't know how many people who are grunting and sweating to put up trusses on a house. And this is to put up the whole Mishkan, which we know was made out of very heavy lumber and very, extensive and big and everything else. Ah, yes, thank you. Thank you, Dale. So it's like, how did Moshe do that? So he goes to God and he says, like, how am I supposed to do that? And he said, you just go through the motions of putting it up and I will put it up. You go through, you put in the effort to kind of like not pretend, but you do it. You go through the motions of lifting things up to put it up, but I will put it up. And you will get the reward for having put it up. And I just love this metaphors because that really speaks to us about our whole lives. It's like, how do we do anything? How do we accomplish something? It says we have an obligation of what's called hishtadlut. We have an obligation to put in our effort, but that Hashem is the one who makes things happen. So the truth is if we know that Hashem is the one who's in charge of the results and in charge of making it successful, it actually gives me more courage to put in my effort because I don't have to have failure anxiety. I don't have to feel like I can't start because I'm not going to succeed. It's like, not that I don't care if I succeed, but the success is not in my hands. The effort is in my hands. The success is not in my hands. That is liberating. This is how children kind of think before they get caught up with, feelings like I'm going to fail. Babies, little kids, they'll try anything. If they want something, they try. And so if it doesn't work, they're like their ego is not shattered. It's not invested. They're just like, I'm in charge of my efforts and I'll just try whatever I can do. So I remember this was a long, long, long time ago when we were in Israel visiting our kids. And I came into like a little back area where our kids keep like onions and potatoes and avocados that were ripening. And I see an avocado that's kind of like looked like it had been stepped on, like kind of smashed. And I see on the counter, kind of high up, that there was like some candy. And I'm like, oh, that's interesting. Like, what's the smushed avocado have to do with like the candy on the counter? Well, it was my grandson who decided, like, I wanted the candy. How can I get the candy? I need something to stand on. And just picked out something out of the bin and figured he doesn't know the properties yet of an avocado versus a potato or an onion and stood on the avocado to, yeah, that didn't work so well, but it was an effort. So it's like, okay, I'm willing to try. So this idea of being willing to try and that Hashem is in charge of the results gives us courage and energy because we spend a lot of time worrying about not being successful. And we spend a lot of time talking to ourselves about why something won't work. And it's not going to work. It might not work. And what if it doesn't work? And all of these things weigh us down. So Hashem tells us, you put in your effort to do the right thing, and I will be in charge of results. Interestingly, this does not mean that you'll be successful. It just means the success wasn't in your hands, so you don't have to take it personally because it wasn't up to you anyway. It's like a farmer who plants the seeds. They're not really in charge of whether the seeds grow. It's like you do your effort, you put the seeds in, you water, you fertilize, you weed, but you're not in charge of the crops. There could be a hailstorm, there could be 2 feet of snow, there could be anything. It's not in your control. This is why we find people oftentimes in agriculture are much more faith-based than other people because they see more immediately how that there's a limit to what their actions control, and they know that it's out of their hands. And yet they go through the process anyway, which I think is just amazing. Like, how do you do that? How do you really do that? But that is really our task. So that was the task of the Mishkan, which also represents all spiritual pursuits. So there's a story, I'm not sure who the rabbi was, somebody amazing, big rabbi. He was in the yeshiva, and one of the students who was like not really so proficient had only learned 3 pages of Talmud, and they were on a schedule, and it was supposed to be much, much more. It was supposed to be like, I don't know, 30. And the rabbi asked me, he's like, where are you up to? He said, well, I've actually, to be honest, I've only done 3 pages. And the rabbi shouted out, he said, 103, that's amazing. And he's telling like the whole, he's done 103. And the guy's like, actually, I said 3, not 103. He said, I heard you. Your 3 is equal to 103. Someone else who has more abilities and more skills, they did their whatever with less effort. You put in 103 pages of effort into what you do. That's your reward, is for that. So there's a basic saying, according to the effort, so goes the reward. And that we are rewarded for the effort, not necessarily for being successful. It says, in the capitalistic world, you get rewarded for your success. And we don't pay more for somebody who put in an extra effort. So the example was given that you take your suit or your skirt or whatever to the seamstress or whatever to be tailored, to be fixed, and you go to pick it up. And then you had an agreed upon price, but when you go to pick it up, the person says, oh, it's been such a hard month. You know, my kids were sick. There was a pandemic. My mother fell and broke her ankle. All these things it was all I could do to get this done. I really think you should pay me like double the price. The person's like, no, I'm paying for the product. I'm not paying for the effort you put into it. You told me how much it costs. That's what I do. It says, that's not how Hashem works. Hashem is like, Hashem, do you know what this year has been so crazy? You know, my kids are home, my work is long distance, I'm frazzled, whatever. It's like, I know. And the reward for that, for anything you were able to accomplish, the successes, the not successes, what was your effort? So when we say A for effort, and usually we toss that aside, we don't really mean it. We really mean, thanks a lot, but we really wanted to see results. But the A for effort that's what it really is being measured. So this of the putting up the Mishkan is considered to be the symbol of that. Of Moshe did something, not only was it something like he had to work hard to do, it was impossible to do. It was not physically possible for him to put up the Mishkan. And God's like, yes, you're right. You go ahead and you go through the motions and I will put it up. Because if you think about all the things, the successes that we do have, a lot of them theoretically, it's like, what? Not sometimes we get so caught up on why things didn't work, but the bigger question is, why do so many things that we set out to do? Why do they work? That's like really the bigger question. Why did my plans work out? Why were my efforts successful? How come this did all come together? We don't ever really say that. We're just always looking at like what didn't work, but like, how did this work? Remember our son Benjamin at the bris for our oldest grandson said, you know, whatever, 8 days ago, we had a true miracle. It was a miraculous birth. And everyone's waiting to hear, you know, the baby was breech or there was this or what distress. It was like, it was a totally normal delivery, which is a miracle. Completely miraculous. But people want to hear, well, no, that's just normal. So we want to hear like, you know, what did you what almost didn't work? It says when things work, it's miraculous. That's why we say the blessing in the morning about the functioning of our body. You got up this morning and you got to the bathroom in time and were able to take care of things. Like, that's amazing. How did that work? Why does that work? And we know how much we rely on it because when it doesn't work, it's a big problem. So all of these things, like we put in our efforts, okay, I need to get myself up, but the fact that my body is calibrated like this, how is that possible? It's a miracle. So the miraculous nature of putting up the Mishkan was a metaphor for us and a symbol for us about putting in effort, and especially in our spiritual lives. Because spiritual lives, sometimes people are even more daunted by than their other parts of their life. It's like, I can't do it. It's too hard. I don't know. I don't have the background. I don't have the time. I don't have this. I don't have that. It's like, just try, just start. So I have to say that even just doing this, ulpan, which is, you know, I get nervous just reading Hebrew out loud, things that I know with the vowels from the Torah. If I'm in a group, I get very nervous doing that. So it's like, okay, this is what I'm supposed to be doing. This will help me. So this is what I'm doing. And we'll see. We'll see. I'll put in my effort. We'll see what happens. And with the help of Gabi, I'm going to be very successful in it. And Dale can help me also. So this is it. So keep in mind as we talk about the completion of the Mishkan that we want to use this really as a mindset for our entire lives. And it decreases the frustration, the anxiety, and it gives us more courage, more energy, and usually more success as well. The second part of the Mishkan has to do with something. This was from Rabbi Frand, which I read and I thought was just so beautiful. He talks about that when Moshe was collecting the offerings from everybody, he only collected what he needed. And when they reached the amount they needed for the project, it was like, enough, don't collect anymore. Now, that's an interesting concept because, first of all, it was so amazing that people were so generous and he had to say stop giving, which is every fundraiser's total dream come true, is to say, no, enough money, please, no more. So that, I don't know if that's repeated itself. But the fact he said, the other question is, why did he say that? Why didn't he say, we'll keep some extra materials, we'll keep some extra wood, some extra gold, things break, dishes crack, they might become ritually impure. Let's just keep extra and we'll keep that for repairs and replacements. What makes this question stronger is that's exactly what they did for the Beit HaMikdash, for the temple. When the temple was built, they did exactly that. They collected extra, and so that they had things in store. So when things broke, they could replace the equipment. So why didn't they do it for the Mishkan? So it's just such a beautiful answer, which is, if we know, as we remember, the Mishkan was portable and people had to carry it. So it's very nice to think like, oh, I'll have extra, but that means somebody's going to need to schlep it. Says if somebody needs to carry it and you are going to then cause a bigger burden to people, says better we shouldn't have more and people not be burdened. So from this, the sages derive a general idea, which is our spiritual stringencies shouldn't be at other people's expense. So it gives an example that you might be familiar with Netilat Yadayim, of washing hands before you make hamotzi. So according to our tradition, ideally you pour the water up to your wrist, where your hand meets your arm. You're supposed to pour up there, which is a fair amount of water. So the story of a rabbi who was at a person's home, and in the days when water had to be brought from the well, and he went to wash, and he washed only to where his fingers bend. He only washed like his fingers, which is the absolute minimum. And his student said, Rebbe, why aren't you washing completely? He said, if it were up to me and I'm schlepping the water, but I see that the girl who works here, if I use all this water, she's going to be the one who needs to go down to the well to bring more water. And I don't need to take things to the absolute whatever on her back. And just having that idea of it's very nice and very good, but sometimes we're stepping over people. Now, we're not talking about performing basic halacha, because then we're obligated, hopefully not to step on people, but we need to be insistent, hopefully in a nice way. But when it comes to doing things extra, says we're careful about people's feelings. It's don't have your piety be on the backs of other people. It says even in the construction of the Mishkan itself, the ark, which should have been pure gold. You have the most precious thing in there. You have the Torah. You're going to have the tablets, the shattered tablets. The most precious thing should have been pure gold. It wasn't. It was wood overlaid with gold. Why? And it was acacia wood, a lightweight wood, because somebody has to carry it. So it's if somebody has to carry it, it's okay, it doesn't have to be, it has to meet the minimum requirements if other people are going to be inconvenienced. But don't bring in Hebrew it's called your chumras, your stringencies. I need this, I need that. It's just go with the basics if other people are going to be inconvenienced by it. So it said even the Mishkan itself, the way it was built was to reinforce this idea of we try to, if there's going to be a burden, you could say, well, they shouldn't have to carry it at all. It's well, they do have to carry it. And many people have to have many burdens in their lives. We all have burdens in our lives that we carry. And what's our goal? Is to lighten the load as much as possible for other people. If we want to carry something heavy, that's fine. To tell somebody else that they should also have to carry, that kind of pull yourself up by your bootstraps approach, that's not our approach. Our approach is, can I give you a hand? How can I help you? And we're not supposed to say, God will help you. Interestingly, I was listening to another class where it says, that every quality a person has can be used for the good. It says, including being an atheist. It says, there's a place for an atheist. It says, where is that? It says, a person who doesn't believe there's a God doesn't believe that God will help. It says that we should also always be part atheist, that when it comes to somebody else, the last thing we should say to someone is, you know what? God will help you. Like, that is cruel. It says, where's your little atheist? It says, I don't know if God exists. I'll help you. It says that is the place to be a non-believer when it comes to the place of being there for other people. It's like, I'm not relying on God for that. I'm going to help you. When it comes to myself, then I want to be a believer. But when it comes to someone else, it's like, I'm not so sure God's helping out here. I need to be the one who steps forward. So we see that even in the construction of the Mishkan itself, that we're being given so many valuable lessons. The third and final of that, which also has to do with Pesach and has to do with our general self, which is, we've noticed, because it was so boring to read, all the measurements of everything. So in Hebrew, a measurement is called a midah. A midah is also a character quality. That we are being told that our character qualities need to be managed and measured. How much, I won't say anger, but how much patience, how much compassion, how much steadfastness, how much yielding, how much resilience, how much, all of these things are all qualities. And people think, oh, I just want to be a nice person. It's like, that is way too vague. That is not the Jewish approach. The Jewish approach means being a good person, means being the right kind of person in the right way at the right time with the right people. And that it's not just like, oh, they're just a nice person. That doesn't wash, because a person just like a nice person could end up being compassionate to somebody who needs some strict talking to, or can be, just too fluffy. It doesn't work. That needs to be measured. So people tend, especially, to think about spiritual growth and spirituality as kind of amorphous and without any dimensions. It's like, spirituality has dimensions. Otherwise, the Jewish people would have been told, you love God, just go build what you want, express yourself, do your own thing. And it wasn't that. It was, this needs to be 2.5 cubits by 2.5 cubits, 50 cubits by 100 cubits, all measured. And that we see in the Parsha of Pekudei, it said, and they did everything according to the way that God commanded. Everything according to the way God commanded. They did it all, and they measured it. So this is going to be relevant at Pesach, which, how many people are familiar with the measurements of the amount of matzah and maror that we eat? Have people heard about that before? So it's you can find it online. It's in my Passover material, so I don't have it because they're still packed away with my Passover things. They're what I call the midas, the midot, the measurements of how much matzah you are supposed to have at your Seder and how much maror, depending on what you're using for your maror. The preferred maror is actually romaine lettuce, but many people in Europe, they didn't have romaine lettuce and they use horseradish. So it tells you how much. There's also how much wine you need to drink with each cup. What are the measurements? So the whole thing throughout the Seder, and some people have a Seder where they pass out, it's like a little, obviously they didn't have that this way in the olden days, but a little laminated card, and you put your matzah on it, or you put your lettuce leaves on it, so that you eat the required amount. And it's very interesting. It's just the whole idea of everything is measured, but that goes with the idea of Seder, of order. The whole thing that we're talking about is God is the Seder leader. God is the orderer. God is in charge of the world. And so we do this to kind of get into our heads. You can't have a holiday that talks about God runs the world, there's an order to everything, and then what we do is everything out of order. The whole idea of the Seder is order. So even people who have, different kinds of creative Seders still do things in the same order. Nobody eats the afikomen first. I've never heard of that. Nobody said, we want to have a reverse Seder. We're going to eat the afikomen first and work our way back. Like, nobody does that. There is an order. We even sing the order. Since when does anybody sing a table of contents? You know, you go to a meeting and they're going to sing a song about what you're going to cover throughout your conference. It'd be like, these people smoke something. I mean, these people are weird. So here we are, we're singing the table of contents to reinforce this is about the order. And then we're going to do things in order and a very measured way, because we're saying that is who God is, which is why we can rely on God, because Passover, Pesach is all about building emunah, faith and trust in God. It's called the night of emunah. The whole thing is about building that faith and trust. So we go through this hands-on, very experiential process in order to do that. So it's really fascinating. Any questions about that or the?
Yes. Ellyn?
Yes, Gabi.
Can you let us know the measurements? Because that might be good for the diet if we're not allowed to eat too much matzah. So I would love that.
It's really not so much. It's basically a sheet of matzah, like one sheet of the square. But you can look it up online, Gabi. You can, because I probably won't get to them until I unpack my Passover things. But if you Google measurements for matzah or measurements for maror, or they would probably be on Chabad, but they'll be on one of those sites, and they will tell you what the dimensions are.
And they say how much romaine lettuce? How do you?
Yes, it's dimension. It's all laid out. It's dimension. So it's whatever it is. I don't know, 7 by 8 or whatever it is. It will tell you. It'll give you the inches and what the measurements are. And in the wine, it'll be, oh, thank you very much, Dale. Halachapedia that tells you. So go to Halachapedia, and you'll see thank you. So good to have helpers to be able to get that information. And it's really, it's even just an interesting exercise, because the Seder has two almost contradictory, not messages, contradictory moods that are going through it. On one hand, it's supposed to be very engaging and very personal. You're supposed to tell the story in a very personal way. You don't have to read the Haggadah. You can tell the story. That's the main thing. But Haggadah, you shall tell the story. On the other hand, we have these very precise pieces of rituals that need to be done very exactly. So it's kind of like, that really is our life. There's pieces of it that are very exact, and within that exactitude, there is the personal expression. So at your Seder, you may be having little Lego people acting out the Seder, and if you're at a Seder with more grown-up people, you might be having a discussion about what is your Mitzrayim, what is your place of constriction in your spiritual life, and all of those are good. And how do we free ourselves? How do we liberate ourselves? How does God liberate us? All those things are all legitimate, as long as you also do the matzah, the maror, and the wine. So it's interesting to have that, because that's Judaism. There is a very defined structure, and then there is an incredible amount of creativity in the same place, which is also going back to the Mishkan. The people, they talk about, it was creative effort with a very defined plan. You might think, well, if it's so defined, I can't be creative. It's like, actually, you can. You can be very creative with a defined plan. In fact, it unleashes more creativity, because you have to figure out how to do it. So it's very challenging to think about how this all works. But basically, the Mishkan, Pesach, all of creation is giving us the same message over and over and over again, which is why it gives us emunah. It gives us faith and trust in God, because we're saying, God, you are the Seder leader, and we are having the Seder at your table. This world is called your Seder table, and that's what we are, and that's who we are, and that is what we are doing. Any other thoughts or questions about Pesach, Seder, etc.? All right. Before we get to Pesach, as we know, Pesach is the most demanding holiday to prepare for, because we need to get rid of chametz. We need to get rid of chametz. Chametz fascinates me. We talk about it. And also, if anybody is interested, I have my book available. I have copies at home of Living in the Present Moment, Divine Design. And there's a big section in there on Pesach. There are things about Miriam, but about the 4 cups of wine, matzah, maror, and what else? Matzah, maror, the wine, and the afikomen. So if anybody wants it, please let me know. I'll be happy to get that to you.
It's a fantastic book. I think I have to review it. You're right.
Thank you. I'm reading it myself. I'm telling you, I'm reading it myself like I didn't even write it. So I read it also. I'm like, oh yeah, I forgot that. It's like, who wrote that? Anyway, I really would encourage you, if you know anybody who would like it, or if you yourself. That being said, when we talk about the searching for chametz, that chametz is such a strange thing in that it is perfectly fine for all the weeks of the year except for one, and then it becomes like poison that you can't have any. Other things in kashrut, we know the law of, I don't think I would do it, but we know the law of that if you have a pot of chicken soup and let's say some milk accidentally pours into it, if the volume of the soup is greater than 60 times the volume of the milk, you can go ahead and eat it, even though it violates the prohibition of mixing milk with meat. It's considered mevatel, it's nullified. When it comes to chametz, there is no nullification, 0 nullification, which is just a fascinating concept. So this thing that is perfectly fine for 51 weeks is not okay, and is not just like not okay, forbidden. It cuts off your soul from your spiritual connection is cut off if you have chametz. So the question is like, what does this mean for us, and how can we also understand, in addition to searching for chametz and getting rid of it and not using it, not eating it, we also go through quite a process. We burn it, we get rid of it, we nullify it, we disown it, we sell it. It's like, how many ways can you not have something? It's like all the ways to not have something. That's what we do. But the question is, what is it that we are also really looking for? What is the chametz that is in our life? So the chametz is the yetzer hara. It's in fact, the yetzer hara is called the yeast in the dough. The yeast in the dough says, what does the yetzer hara do? Specifically in the realm of lack of humility, of arrogance, is it puffs us up. It puffs us up. And that arrogance and humility cannot coexist at all on Pesach. It reminds me of in a hospital delivery room or an operating room, we all know that there are germs everywhere. There are germs everywhere, but when you're doing surgery, if you're doing surgery, then you need to have everything be super clean. Or just like how we know, like we've been wiping things down and no germs, like we don't want any germs. So at this time, it says the yetzer hara, the evil inclination, becomes more damaging to us because we're trying to get to the side of strengthening our emunah and trust in God, and we're trying to get to a place of humility, which is what the matzah represents, is humility, simplicity. Then I have to make sure that nothing else is there, that I don't end up with an admixture, that I don't get both things together. So this is like a pure birth. This is a birthing room for the Jewish people, is Pesach. We are being birthed as the Jewish people every year at Pesach, and the delivery room needs to be pristine, and the baby can't be exposed to the germs that normally when they get older, it'll be okay. But during the birth, it has to be clean. It says during the birth of the Jewish people, during us as the birth of each Jewish person, we need to be in a pristine environment that has no arrogance. So when we're doing the bedikat chametz, when we're looking for it, and we go around our house and we're looking for it, yes, we are looking for chametz, but it says, and it should be accompanied by a look into our own souls. It says that the candle that we hold, that we're going around looking, lurking, and it's amazing how your house looks when you look by candlelight and you're looking for stuff. The eyes I don't know if other people experience this. First of all, I'm like, I can't believe my house is this dirty. I'm like, I don't see it normally. It's like, it's good enough. I mean, I remember, one time, it was a very stressful time, and it was before Rosh Hashanah, not Pesach. It was before Rosh Hashanah, and I hadn't had time to do anything. And my mom said, I'll pay for you to have some cleaning help beforehand, which I normally don't have. And I had the person, she said, like, what do you want me to do? I have like whatever, 2 hours. I'm like, you know what? Just clean anything like that's like from eye level to waist level. Like if it can't be seen, don't touch it. It's like, because I don't have time for that. So it's just like, but that's kind of like how I kind of operate. It's kind of like this level. But Pesach is getting down on your hands and knees and looking, which means also the same thing with ourselves. Like, how often do we take a really close look at ourselves? It's easier to look for chametz than it is to look at ourselves, but we're supposed to use it as the same opportunity. And so when we go through our house, and I one time did a class on this, which I just thought of, maybe I'll share it again next week or send it to you, of like a checklist of cleaning your home and using your home as a metaphor for what we're looking for in ourselves. So it says, so when you clean your, when you are cleaning your windows, and those are, you notice, I mean, I saw my windows this morning. It's like, they really need to be clean. It's like, but that is cleansing our eyes. It's like, how do we see? What is the lens through which we are looking at other people? How do we see? I mean, there's a story about a woman who was complaining. She shouldn't have been doing this. She was complaining to her husband, like, oh, I can't believe the woman who lives across. It was a home complex where there was a courtyard. And in the old days when people would hang out their wash to dry. And she would say, like, I can't believe that woman who moved in, like her laundry's never clean, and it's all this, and blah, blah, blah. And then she was complaining to her husband, I can't believe she's probably like the worst housekeeper ever. And one day she sees that the neighbor's wash, and he says, I can't believe it. Somebody must have talked to her because like her laundry looks really clean. Her husband said, I washed our windows. So it says, so when we are cleaning our windows and doing that, it's not just spring cleaning. It is, how am I seeing the world? Because it helps us to have physical things that we are doing to focus on these more spiritual, intellectual, emotional exercises, because it's too hard to just sit there and think. So do something. So when we do that and we are cleaning these surfaces, and when we go into our drawers, I actually knew a woman for a number of years, I don't know if she still does it. She used cleaning drawers as a process of going through our life, because usually drawers are kind of stacked like that, of going into what's in there. And do you have a junk drawer? Like, what's in there? And all of us like have a junk drawer in our mind, like where all the stuff that doesn't fit, like what do we do with that? We need to take care of that. And how are things organized and arranged in each of the drawers of our relationships of our life? Top drawer, who's in our top drawer? Top drawer relationship, second drawer relationship, that's okay. that all of these things, that all of these drawers of looking at them. And in our closet, people always say, you know, that we use the metaphors. People, we have skeletons in our closet. Okay, so I don't know if I have skeletons in my closet, but I've got stuff in there. But the thing is how do I deal with my past? How do I deal with the mistakes I've made? And when I'm going through my closet and I'm vacuuming, like, what do I do with that? How do I, again, going to our book, how do I extract the wisdom, and how am I making the same mistake again? Like, am I creating more skeletons? People tend to think of skeletons like, oh, that was the past, but some people are continuing making new skeletons that should be in, they should have in their closet, is to bring them out to the light of day and explore them. So all of the things, you can come up with your own metaphors as well. You know, you look at your food, you know, what are my health habits? Where's my kashrut? Where's my, you know, when I look at my closet, my clothes, where's the appropriateness of what I'm wearing? Like, all of these things can be questions that we ask, and you can be creative and use your own, but to not waste a good cleaning opportunity by just cleaning, but to use it as a metaphor for, I'm looking for the chametz in my life. I'm looking for the things, because chametz, again, by itself, we have chametz. You could say, well, if chametz is so bad, why do we ever have it? It's like, because we live in the physical world and there is a place for the Yetzer Hara. You need to have a little bit of arrogance in this world in order to survive. You need to have a little bit of these desires for things, otherwise you would never do anything. So it has its place, or it has its place and maybe it's gone stale, because really chametz means to chamutz, means to sour. That's what it really means. So something could have been good, but like those things that are lurking in the back of your refrigerator that are in little containers that are really not good anymore, they were good, but they're not now. So the things in our lives, like, that served me before, it served me then, but it doesn't serve me now. It's gone a little sour. It's gone bad. And so I need to take it out. And so the feeling that the physical environment that we're going to create for ourselves should be matched by how we feel spiritually and emotionally as well. It's like, I feel cleansed. I feel ready. I feel fresh. I feel like I can be rebirthed. I feel like I can be born again, to coin a term. I feel like I can be born again in this Pesach, and that is redemption, that is the feeling that I can get to this new place on Pesach. So all of that's going to start and launch. I mean, people have been already, getting their Pesach things and starting, or at least I shouldn't say that. I don't know how people are actually starting. I haven't. Most people are talking about starting. So I've done a lot of talking about starting. But people, it's like when they announce in Shul, Shabbat HaChodesh, this is the month, it's Rosh Chodesh Nisan, 2 weeks. It's like, oh, I guess Pesach is really coming. And so then we start. But the truth is that there is something to be said about having a sense of urgency, which is the other piece that gets added in. Pesach is also about having a sense of urgency. The matzah itself, which has to be made in 18 minutes, between the time that the flour hits the water and it's baked, 18 minutes, otherwise it's chametz. You could say, seriously, you can tell the difference between a piece of matzah that was like 19 minutes versus 18 minutes. The whole thing is just flour and water anyway. It's not like a, flambe. I mean, it's flour and water. It's just the side of paste. And you're going to tell me there's a big difference in that? It's like, no, but the making of it is about having a sense of urgency. The Jewish people left Egypt with a sense of urgency, of zerizut, of alacrity, of wanting to get out, that it was like they don't want to postpone anything, which is supposed to be a message for us about our mitzvot, that there are expiration dates on things, there are deadlines, but we don't feel them. So it's interesting. I was working, and I am totally like this. I had something I was supposed to write a Devar Torah for the dot newsletter for Pesach. I've known about it for 4 weeks. It was due yesterday, and I sent it at, I don't know, 11:30 last night. So it was yesterday. I said by the end of the day, and the day didn't end until midnight. So I am a deadline person. So I was trying to get some information from some family members that's very beneficial for them. It's for a distribution of money that they're inheriting. So you'd think like people would be kind of quick about providing that information. And I kept saying, when I need this information, I need this information, I need this information. And like, nobody's doing anything. So I sent out an email and I just created a deadline. I said, the information is all due on Thursday, by Thursday. Well, funny thing, all the information came in. It's like, it wasn't so, but we need that. So we even understand that the length of our lives, that God shortened our human life in order to give us a sense of urgency. That before, when human beings lived a really long time, says, I know what you're going to do with your time. You're going to waste it until you get to the last few years, and then you're going to get going. So I might as well shorten it, because I'm not doing you any favors by letting you live so long. So that by having an expiration date on our lives, an expiration date on our matzah, an expiration date on all these things, like it must be done by this time, is supposed to also be a matzah mindset of like, this opportunity has an expiration date. The mitzvah tomorrow is not the same as the mitzvah today. Today's mitzvah is for today, tomorrow's mitzvah is for tomorrow. And it's just an illusion in my mind that I can kind of carry it forward. I really can't. So getting into this mindset of there's a sense of urgency with what I'm doing with my life. There's a sense of order and a sense of creativity. And my efforts, I'm commanded to make, and God is the one who's in charge of the success of it all. We see that all these layers all intersect, blend together, going from the Mishkan to the construction of the Mishkan, to the new month, Passover coming, redemption unfolding. All of this is all together, and we all can access it and have been given access to it. You don't have to be the Kohen Gadol. You don't have to be a Kohen. You don't even have to be in the Mishkan. That we are all going to create this Passover, this Pesach experience and environment in the privacy of our own homes. And maybe more so this year, kind of like last year, really in the privacy of our own homes, depending on who you're getting together with. But again, people are focused like, I can't have this person, I can't have that person. It's like, that's okay. Maybe the work that we have to do this year is more about this other aspect of searching for that chametz, looking for it, being focused on the measurements, the midas, the qualities of what we want to be and who we want to be in this world, and having it be, instead of fixated, I mean, we're supposed to pay attention, but we need to connect the dots, that the midah, the measurement of the matzah, is supposed to remind me that my midos also need to be measured, and that I need to have an understanding of where I'm at and what things need to be either more of or less of, because all of us are walking around as a whole recipe with a lot of different ingredients. That chametz, that yetzer hara, cannot be part of the picture on Pesach, however, because that is going to keep us from exploring all the other midos, because the yetzer hara is going to be, you are fine just the way you are, especially compared to that person. I mean, you know, you're pretty holy, so I don't think you really need to do anything because you're head and shoulders above that other person. Or it's going to say, you think you're going to be so holy with all the mistakes you've made? You're so busy about your matzah and the right whatever. What about the other thing that you're doing wrong? So it's either going to be to get us to not move because we're so far gone, or we're so far ahead. The yetzer hara is never going to say, you know, it's a good idea to take a good close look at yourself. I'm sure you'll be pleasantly surprised to see what your strengths are, and you might be a little discouraged by seeing what your shortcomings are, but it's a very good exercise and you can do it. That's not the message of the yetzer hara ever. Okay, so those other messages are our Pesach messages. Just take a good look. And then the final piece I want to say about that is that when we look for chametz, the tradition is to turn off the lights, which is really weird, because if you're looking for something, usually you'd think, well, let's turn all the lights on, not let's like go in the dark. But something happens when you turn the lights out and you direct a flashlight or a candle in a narrow place. It actually heightens, makes you more attentive to what you're seeing. It's more like a laser. I'm blocking out the distractions and I'm just focusing on this. It's like when people are thinking, it's like why they also tend to narrow their eyes. Like, why do we do that? They don't go, unless they're surprised. It's like, if you're thinking, it's like, So narrowing the focus, first of all, keeps us from being overwhelmed. It's like looking at your whole house, like, I cannot clean this whole house. It's like, don't worry about that. Just, I have an acronym called putter, pick up the rag. Just pick up the rag. Once you start on the light switch, it will take you to the wall, which will take you to the baseboards, which will take you to the whole room. But don't think I have to clean the whole house, because then you won't start. I'll be like, it's too much. So the narrow focus on the Bdikat Chametz is looking in small areas a little bit at a time. So on one hand, we're blocking it out so that we can focus. On the other hand, we're blocking it out so we don't overwhelm ourselves. And both of those work. So when we do that, we want to be specific. And the search for chametz is a specific, I'm specifically looking at this counter, in this closet, at this quality in myself. I'm not thinking about everything altogether, because the everything picture is too much. It's too big. All right, ladies, thank you so much. Yes, Patricia, please unmute.
Yasher koach.
So,
Dorothy.
Ellen,
Yes, Patricia.
I've always thought of searching for the chametz as something that we did with our kids,
Yes.
right? So I've never thought of it as, is this something that we really do throughout our whole house to really look at our house cleaning? Is that what you're talking about?
You're really supposed to look, so I'll tell you what, there's a lot of different parameters. You honestly do not have to look in places for sure that you know have never had any food in them. So if you're somebody who never ever is chomping on a cracker while you're walking through your bedroom, you do not have to look there. So that being said, this is a funny holiday. This is a holiday where the women have kind of taken over how we do this. And I won't say we ignore the rabbis, because that is certainly not right. But the women take this much more seriously than the rabbis do. It's like, because the rabbis are like, this is not spring cleaning. You're just supposed to be focusing on chametz. And we're like, yeah, right. Okay, this is our home and we're making the whole thing. It doesn't work. So the looking for chametz, that can actually start now as you're going through your home. And what people usually do is they start from the outer circle, like the areas that are least likely to have something. And they go in closer and closer to the kitchen, and that's closer to right before Pesach. But the look, which is why most people have the custom to hide like 10 pieces of bread or cracker, something, so that you have something to actually look for. But the expectation is that you have already looked. The whole process of preparing for Pesach has already taken place. And this is just because you are saying a blessing over the looking for chametz. And so it's to have it not be in vain. And also so you don't say, well, I know there's no chametz here, so I don't really need to do the bedika. I don't really need to look. Does that answer your question, Patricia? Okay. And I think it's also helpful, especially as kids get older, is to bring them into the conversation about what this represents. That it is fun, and it's a fun thing for kids to do. And they should also know it's a good opportunity to talk about searching for things, of searching for things that, depending on the age, of searching for things that you want to work on, so searching for things that you're ready to get rid of. It could even be for a little kid, like toys that you no longer use. Like what's no longer appropriate for you, of giving children a sense of like, you're grown up now. You can do this now. So it could really go in lots of different directions. But the actual bedika, the actual search, takes place the night before Erev Seder. It will take place for this year, because of Shabbos, it will be on Thursday night. So Thursday night, even though the first Seder is not till Saturday night, because you obviously can't look on Friday night, and you can't burn for sure on Shabbos. So the looking will be on Thursday night, and it'll be burned on Friday morning, except for the challah that you will have on Shabbos. And that is the only remaining chametz you'll have. It's a kosher for Pesach Shabbos meals, because your house should be ready completely for Pesach, but you can't have matzah, because you can't have matzah until the Seder. So you're in no man's land. So you eat challah very carefully. Some people go outside and eat it over like a napkin or something, so they don't have anything left, so that you don't have any chametz around. And then you can flush the remainder, not in big portions, otherwise you'll have a clogged toilet. Don't do that. So just like very small portions, or just eat extra, and to get rid of your chametz. I love, it's a mitzvah to eat your chametz, right? This is like, we put all our things on our dining room table that we're trying to finish up. Okay, so they're like, 15 pretzels left. It's like, okay, well, I'll just eat these. It's like, it's a mitzvah to get rid of this chametz. So I'm eating all this junk food to get ready for Pesach. So yeah, that's the searching. Any other questions at all? Beth Ann, you're muted, or at least you're not coming through, I should say, even though I don't see you being. Now you're muted. You're muted. Do you want to put your question in the chat? Okay. Anybody else have a question while Beth Ann is asking, is writing? Okay. All right. We'll wait for Beth Ann. Never mind? Okay. All right. Ladies, it was so nice to be with you. I want to wish you, it should be a good Shabbos. Truly, the month of Nisan should be a time of redemption, renewal, rebirth. I know even just in our garden, regardless of the fact that we're going to have 2 feet of snow, that the little things are budding, and spring is on the way, but definitely redemption is unfolding, and how that's going to look exactly, I have no idea. So thank you very much for joining me. Have a wonderful Shabbos. Chodesh Tov. You should have a wonderful new month of Nisan. And starting in the month of Nisan is, if you see a blossom on a fruit tree, then we say a blessing over that. And I don't know, I just thought of that now, so I don't know what page it's on in your prayer book, but you can go to your prayer book and the blessing for seeing the blossom on a fruit tree, because they were saying that redemption, just like fruit, is blossoming, and once you see the blossom, that means the fruit can't be far behind. So God willing, we'll see that as well, and the cold will not destroy any blossoms. I haven't seen any blossoms on fruit trees yet, so I think we're actually safe for not having that wrecked up this year. All right. Thank you so much, ladies. Have such a wonderful, wonderful Shabbos. Take care.
Thank you.
My pleasure. Thank you so much for being with me.
Rosh Chodesh, everyone.
Take good care.
Thank you. Bye.
Bye-bye.